Gentlemen, ladies, I bid you welcome. My name is Edmund Warner, Esquire, the upkeeper of Warner Manor and the noble image of the Warner family. I hope you enjoy this reading from my diary, which is currently being held up for me to read by my manservant Baxter. Wednesday. Dear Diary, what a frightfully busy day it was at Warner Manor. Not only did I have to try and fulfil my daily duties, but I also had to contend with disruption of the highest order. Before I regale you with today's goings-on, let me give you a brief idea of just how jam-packed my schedule normally is. In the mornings, I have Baxter whip me up some breakfast. I can never predict how hungry I will be after my bath. Sometimes the heat makes my head swell up and I feel flustered. So to accommodate all possible outcomes, I have Baxter prepare all the variants of my breakfast meals. That way, I can choose the one I want and have the rest discarded. This morning I was feeling rather peckish, so I had him bake me up a Buckinghamshire sesame seed loaf. This took 3 attempts because he added too many seeds the first time, not enough seeds the second time, and then on the 3rd attempt got the consistency a little too even for my liking. This was the first and perhaps most disturbing disruption of the day, as it held me back from my first morning duty, which is to make sure Baxter has carried out a full inspection of the grounds. Now, during times of milder climate, I would drive alongside him in the Jeep, but as winter draws in, one fears one may catch one's death of cold. So now I leave Baxter to walk the grounds himself. Once he completes the grounds inspection, my next duty is to ensure he prepares 11s for me. This came perilously close to being delayed, so I had to call him away from fixing a blocked drainage pipe and help him prepare my Oxford scones with Devonshire cream. Not to mention a piping hot pot of Her Majesty's finest tea, Earl Grey no less. I usually recline and muse for about an hour in the drawing room, and then when I get hungry again, my next chore is having to endure Baxter's attempts at lunch. I know he is saving the finest food for the evening meal, but is a simple whale pate too much to ask? I do get ever so bored of Cropwell Bishop Stilton with quince and port sauce, or the slow-cooked rabbit ragout with shaved pecorino. I know what you're thinking. Blimey, Edmund. Well, if you are thinking that, please know I prefer Master Warner. Certainly on first encounters, anyhow. Blimey, Master Warner. That's better. That is practically a full day's work already. Well, as the old saying goes, a Warner's work is never done. So, after lunch, it is straight back to it. But this, dear listeners, is when today's major disruption occurred. Father left one of his documents at home on his computer, so he ballywell called me and asked me to email it to him. Well, chaps, as you can imagine from hearing my morning schedule, the afternoons get pretty full on, so this new task really had me up against the ropes. I had to scout around, but I could not see anything on the computer, so I rang Father to inform him. He then told me he did not mean literally on top of the computer, but in the computer itself. Well, he ballywell should have made that clear then. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that electronic letters are referred to as documents. Frightfully confusing terminology, straight from the brains of specky basement-dwelling technocrats. I had Baxter fire up the computer, and the stove as well, one does declare. A warm pot of Her Majesty's finest ale would help Edmund put his finding hat on. So I perused around the computer looking for said documents. But no luck was to be had. Baxter pointed out I may want to use the mouse. I thought he'd gone barking mad, but he insisted it was a technical term. These terms were really starting to get my dander up. Who on earth dreams them up? When Baxter puts my videos on the internet, it's like he's speaking another language. Although, frankly, this is no different to his usual manner of conversation I've become accustomed to. He's not so much a manservant as he is a gibbering buffoon at times. It may shock you, good listeners, at this point to hear that I'm not actually all that au fait with this technology lark. The last blackberry I saw went into one of Baxter's famous winter pies. But I have a solid enough understanding to get by. So I dismissed Baxter and told him to cover my duties, which consist of keeping an eye on Baxter to make sure he's doing his duties. So for now, he would have to keep an eye on himself. A dangerous proposition indeed, but a good leader and tactician must delegate. After a further 10 minutes of looking, I came to the conclusion that the computer was not a touchscreen. However, I still felt I'd been more productive than Baxter and his bizarre suggestion of rodent involvement. Anyhow, I rung Father once again, who was now starting to get rather brutish. The sheer cheek! He thought he was having a busy day. I had hundreds of jobs that Baxter needed to do, and I was foregoing supervision on those to muck around with this paltry little task. Furthermore, I had to be at the Bentley Choriston residence by 4 for ball and afternoon tea. I really was running jocks to the wall here, and Father was showing no sympathy whatsoever. He told me to open my documents and have a look for the file entitled Quarterly Fiscal Profit 2016. Crikey, what a mouthful! Anyhow, with all the business of the manor and the constant distractions, I had become a tad confused and reverted to looking in my own paper documents filed in our library. After perusing these files, which largely consisted of old schoolwork and my letters to Margaret Thatcher, a thrilling collection I assure you, there was still nothing to be found. So I rang Father to inform him once again. Finally, the old boy saw sense and realised I had far too much to do here for him to be adding to my ever-growing list. He asked Baxter to do it, reminding me that his critical meeting was in 2 minutes' time, and I of course said I would act as an intermediary to pass on the message. However, I was rather peckish and waited for Baxter to prepare my afternoon tea before I informed him of this task. I'm sure Father's business associates would have understood I could not carry out my important jobs on an empty tongue. Crikey, is that the time? Well, 7:25 no less. Well, I better be getting to bed post-haste. Father is not back from work yet, but I'm sure come breakfast time he'll be thanking me for my gallant efforts. And I thank you, dear listeners, for joining me on another tale of my oh-so-hectic life. Maybe next time I read to you, things may be somewhat calmer. For now, though, dear listeners, I bid you good evening, and I wish you all an undisturbed and peaceful night. Now, I do realise that for those of you living anywhere north of Buckinghamshire, the preceding message may appear hollow and sarcastic, and for good reason too. As for the rest of you, though, good night.